tonight. For those of you who might not know me, I am Miss Slate. I am the College and Career Counselor at Chatham High School. And we are very fortunate to have 5 admission reps from a wide range of schools here to talk about just, shed some light on the college process, talk about trends, talk about things that have been changing. But before I do introduce them, or they introduce themselves, I should say, I do want to say just a few notes. You might have heard, or if you were on earlier, that we are recording this session, so we will be able to send it out for you to watch at your leisure. And then I have contacts for individual reps as well that I'm happy to share out with you all if there maybe are some specific questions or things that you're thinking of. For tonight, the chat is disabled. But if you, like I said, if you do have questions, feel free to write them down. You can send me an email. I'm happy to field those, or direct them to the appropriate lovely rep. But in the interest of time, I think we'll just dive in. And Emma, as our Zoom host, I'm going to throw it to you first, if you don't mind giving us a little 1-2 minute spiel, Washington and Lee, and then we'll hear, hop on to the next square. Brady Bunch Square. Is that
Perfect.
that's dating myself. Brady Bunch Square. Oh no.
I get it. I get it. But sometimes in a meeting, I don't always know. But yes, hi everybody. My name is Emma. I am an admissions representative from Washington and Lee University. We're located in Lexington, Virginia. We're a small liberal arts school. We have fewer than 2,000 undergraduate students. WNL is primarily an undergraduate institution, though we do have a law school as well, but that is our only graduate program. We really pride ourselves on, our small class sizes, the availability of pre-professional programs and the success of our graduates across a variety of fields. We have an amazing campus culture that's based on our honor system, which is a really big cornerstone of our campus and culture on campus. I mentioned that we're located in Lexington, Virginia. It's a small town in kind of the Blue Ridge Mountains. We're actually a double college town, though. We're home to Washington and Lee, and then right next door, like very close next door, if you were to keep walking on this walkway, is the Virginia Military Institute, or VMI. So we're a double college town. Things are very walkable. Front to back or side to side campus is only about a 15-minute walk or so. And we're right near the town. So there are some great relationships and service opportunities within the town of Lexington and the community of Rockbridge, the county that we're located in. And I know on my screen, I should also add that I am an alum, so I graduated from the school in 2016, and I work remotely. So I actually live in Pittsburgh, PA. So that's where I am currently located, and hence I have the WNL background instead. And then I know Judy is the one directly below me, so I'm going to go down to Judy next.
Well, talk about the two kind of bookends for a session like this. So I am Judy Salmonson. I am the regional recruiter for Northern New Jersey and Greater New York for the University of Alabama. Roll Tide. So while Washington and Lee is this very small, kind of kitschy liberal arts school, we are a 40,000 plus campus of undergraduates and graduates combined. We have a 1,200-acre campus that students love to roam, but I will tell you that everything is very logically and very cohesively located, where you can walk corner to corner in a half an hour. That is probably one of my favorite things about campus, is that you can just walk and you can get everywhere you need to go, whether it be under your own manpower or woman power, person power, I guess you would say, through a scooter or a bike or through our Crimson Ride. We have 8 colleges and over 200 majors to offer our students. But students from this area most popularly come to us for our College of Engineering, our Culverhouse College of Business, our Capstone College of Nursing, and then the random, as I call the arts and sciences. The 2 majors that I get asked about constantly are our psychology program and our criminology and criminal justice programs. So we do have relationships in and around Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, Alabama proper, but we do, of course, have a global reach. One of my favorite areas on campus is my background, because since I'm located regionally in northern New Jersey, just a hop skip away from Chatham, this is the Shelby Engineering Quad. University of Alabama puts so much emphasis on our engineering buildings in our program that they decided to build a whole quad and put all of their engineering buildings right in there. We have 10 libraries, Rogers being the engineering library that is located to my left on your screen. But it is a wonderful southern campus that is really steeped in all of those southern traditions. And I look forward to sharing some of them with you this evening.
Paige, do you mind hopping on the mic next?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Paige Tatum. I am a regionally based counselor at Elon University. I am based on Long Island, but I work with everyone from New Jersey and the 5 boroughs as well. So happy to be here tonight. At Elon, we are located in Elon, North Carolina, of all places, right in the middle of the state of North Carolina between Greensboro and then our state capital, Raleigh. So really great access to major cities with learning opportunities, internships, and of course, fun too. Our campus sits on almost 600 acres, but it's still very walkable. A lot of that acreage includes our farm and a driving range, which is a fun fact. But it's definitely a very beautiful campus. I'm sitting in front of the Love School of Business right now. We have 5 professional schools, including the business school, and soon we'll be adding a 6th with engineering. We have over 70 majors and minors on campus at this time, with more to come, D1 sports teams to cheer on. And we're really big on experiential learning. Every class has that component, but we do have a separate requirement for all students to take part in, where they have to complete 2 of the following 5 options, which include internship, study abroad, service, leadership, and research. So that'll depend all on what the student wants to do, but 85% will do 3 or more, just with how accessible these opportunities are on campus. Study abroad is definitely our thing. On one of those many lists, we've been #1 for 18 years now, and that also includes our 4 Study USA centers now in Charlotte, New York City, DC, and Los Angeles. But you can't go wrong with campus as well. Definitely got a lot of school spirit, almost 300 clubs and organizations. But yeah, thank you all for coming tonight.
Great. And Patrick, if you want to hop on.
Evening. My name is Patrick Mazer. I'm one of our associate directors. I'm also regionally based. I'm in South Jersey, right outside Philadelphia. I work primarily with students in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, travel around all throughout the year, primarily in the fall. I'll be back up to visit Chatham and a number of schools in the area every fall. College of Charleston. We are mid-sized public university located right in beautiful downtown Charleston, South Carolina. So really for us, a great overlap for our students. It's a historic campus, definitely smaller than the other footprints, but it is the fact that it's right in the middle of the incredibly charming and beloved city of Charleston. So 10 for us, mid-size is about 10,000 undergraduate students. We keep a much more smaller liberal arts college feel though. So for us, that's an average class size of about 23 and a student teacher ratio of about 18-1. City life doesn't hurt that the beach is about 25 minutes away. So for our students, it's a really nice balance of history and culture and small class sizes with a really broad academic portfolio.
Thanks, Patrick. And last but not least,
Good evening, everyone. My name is Milan Whetstone. I am one of the assistant directors of admissions at Rowan University. I focus on our pathway program, so I work really closely with our SEND office for our EOF and our RISE program. So Rowan University is located in Glassboro, New Jersey, a small town, but not so small because Rowan, my favorite saying is Rowan is always growing, and we really are. We are going to be the first school in the state of New Jersey that's going to have a veterinarian program. So we are very excited to about that. Rowan is specifically growing when it comes to the field of medicine. We do have two medical schools. We have a medical school in Camden, New Jersey, as well as Stratford, New Jersey. We have about 16 different colleges and schools across Rowan University. We have about 17,000 undergraduate students at Rowan University. Our student to faculty ratio is 17-1. Our class sizes are about 23 people per class. We have an 85% freshman retention rate, meaning that students are enjoying Rowan and doing well and coming back to further their education. We have a lot of master's programs as well and doctorate programs. We are known for engineering as well as education. So yes, Rowan, like I stated before, we are constantly always growing, even when it comes to our campus. I was a student there. I graduated in 2011. So what it looks like now compared to what it looked like in 2011, totally different. We are immersed in the city of Glassboro, meaning that we have a lot of partnerships with a lot of the eateries and the stores and everything in Glassboro.
Awesome. Thanks so much for those initial kind of kickoff. And let's just go right in. So, as we look to fall 2025, as I mentioned earlier, we have sophomores and junior families on the conversation. So they're thinking about future forward stuff. What are some of the biggest changes in admission you have noticed over the past years, possibly? I think we're well beyond that kind of COVID, luckily, right? Admissions, whiplash that we kind of saw. So what are some things that possibly you noticed this past cycle that I know you're still wrapping it up, but.
I can get us started. I think for a big one, I think even representative of who's here tonight continues to be a big push south. That's where we've seen a lot of changes and I would say talking big industry level wide. There's a big push on southern schools. So part of that is increased applications on schools in the South, which is going to make things a bit more competitive and really just kind of change things from a numbers perspective. As a response to that, and some terms that'll come up in different ways tonight, demonstrated interest, right? How schools track who is engaged with them, and that's things like reaching out, touring campus, coming to a high school visit, connecting with us at a college fair, emailing their counselor. There's a lot of different things that fall under that umbrella. But one thing I've noticed is for ourselves especially, but a lot of other schools, is as the number of applications goes up, it becomes harder and harder for us to pinpoint who are the students that don't just want to be accepted, but who really want to attend. And so demonstrated interest has continued to become more and more important. And that is a trend that I do not see subsiding anytime soon.
That's an interesting point, and some may be familiar, right? I talk to the students all the time, right? If you're applying to 10 schools, I like to equate it as like asking someone to prom. If you ask 10 people to prom, they have no idea who you're ultimately going to pick to go to prom, right? Same thing with the college admissions. So they want to know who's going to be that sure prom date. And yeah, I do think demonstrated interest is a piece of that. Out of curiosity, is there anyone on the call that does not track demonstrated interest?
So we don't. University of Alabama doesn't track demonstrated interest.
Oh, Judy, you're a little bit quiet.
Oh, you can't hear me?
You're quite
No.
muffled. I think you're saying that you do not track.
No,
Oh.
I do not. Okay. We do not track interest. But what I do is that what I know the students that I speak with. So while the university as a whole does not use that when they are looking at applicants to, if you've been to the campus 3 times, oh, we're going to automatically admit you. I know the students that I'm speaking with, and let's say something on campus is happening and I know that a certain student would benefit from that, I will be the one to reach out to them to do that, to make sure that they have that knowledge. So it's a two-edged sword. I will also comment that along with a lot of Southern school interest, that just means that all of the requirements and all of the students who are applying, all of the information that we're getting, we're looking at it in a different way. So what's happening is that, the GPAs of these students are also increasing. When the GPAs are increasing, we have to now start to look at holistically at different ways to try to carve up of who's going to be a great fit for our campus. So it's kind of hard when everybody who's applying have those great GPAs and they're all involved in school sports and they're all working and they're all doing great things. There now starts to become that you have to see the forest for the trees and start to figure out, as Patrick said, who's going to really want to be part of us. If everybody's applying and we have 70,000 applications, well, we may only have room for 7,000 freshmen. So who's really going to come?
Sure, but I'm glad you highlighted, Patrick demonstrated interest. That's not Patrick, but College of Charleston, right? Alabama, because that's a great family member. That's a great question to be asking admission reps, to be asking on a campus tour. Just so you know, what game am I playing? Not game, but how am I going about this process, to be just more informed? Sorry to cut off.
I was just gonna add that, yes, we're pretty transparent. We do look at engagement, right? That's a big piece of crafting a 450 person class, right? It's gonna be small. So we really need to be intentional about the offers that go out there, right? I would say one thing that's changed, and this is perhaps broad and maybe very obvious to those who are here as participants too, but there are a lot of ways to engage now with schools that were not available before 2020, before 2021, whatever year cycle you're referring to. We didn't used to have virtual open houses, and we have an event for sophomores and juniors on Sunday night. So I would say if you are interested in a school, it really doesn't hurt to engage in whatever way is, feasible for your family. If that doesn't mean coming to campus, that's okay. We also have a lot of ways to do that online, and I'm sure every school here does as well in various ways too. Interviews, I think it can be overwhelming sometimes, the number of things that are out there, but it is definitely helpful to know exactly kind of what, how schools are keeping tabs on these things so that you're putting yourself in the best light.
Absolutely. It doesn't hurt to engage, even if it's not being tracked. You are learning more about the institution. You're figuring out if it is a good vibe or not, or what works for you. And I'm full of analogies, but essentially, like I always tell the students, right? If you have a crush on someone and you never tell them, you're never going to be able to date them. It's never going to happen, right? So same with the colleges. Let them know you have a crush on them.
I will put a little bit of context to that though. Please don't ask me and ask if we have a psychology program, right? Don't ask a question for the sake of asking a question, right? This is not a time for simple flirtation. You can Google that, right? You can go on our website and you can find out basic information.
Mhm.
Now, what you can do is say, hey, I'd love to learn a little bit more about what this one particular program entails, or how this program is different from other programs, right? Coming to us with the Google question really just says that either you haven't done your basic research or you're just sending this email to everyone that you're possibly thinking of, and it just makes more work for us, and it doesn't get us any closer to, which is our overall goal for everyone, to be more engaged.
That's a great point. And I've worked with students. We've sat in my office to talk about what are you interested in actually asking, and how do we make it to steal your word, Emma, intentional question that is worth everyone's time that's involved in the in the conversation. It's not just the, how is your psychology program? Totally. Other trends that, I know that we've been feeling and noticing in the counseling office, and maybe haven't seen this past fall, but we might be seeing coming up, is we're noticing slowly, schools or states are requiring test scores for admissions. I'm not sure if that's something that you are privy to conversations at your institution, or if you already offer that policy. But just curious if anyone is willing to speak to the test, the whole test optional, test blind, test required kind of conversation.
So I'll start off with that one. It's actually easy for me. The University of Alabama will be test optional for admission for the fall of 2026. And the reason why I stress the word admission is that people consistently get confused because our application is for admission and scholarship. So if you want an automatic merit scholarship from the University of Alabama, you will need to have a test score GPA combination. So you can apply as a test optional student for admission. And if you, once you are looking at the website and you see, I've got the GPA, let me go take a test, or maybe I've taken a test in the past and, oh, I have a score that would net me some really good money, I'm going to send it as a follow-up. As long as you take the test by December of your senior year, you can send that test score and you will automatically be granted a scholarship. Now, if you have a 4.58 GPA and you have no SAT or ACT score, you will not receive an automatic merit scholarship. So that's where the difference is for us, is that for admission, yes, we will, look at just your application and just your transcript. But if you need an automatic merit scholarship, then you're going to have to dig a little bit deeper and you're going to have to take that one of those tests, and we'll accept either one. We're not fussy, ACT or SAT, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. As long as the score appears on the chart along with your GPA, we would be glad to give you that money.
I think for Elon, it's important to note we are test optional, except for nursing, since we're direct entry, we do need a score, but that admissions SAT, ACT range you might see will differ from the scholarship cohorts, students that have been admitted and enrolled into these cohorts. So I always recommend looking at a first year profile, especially for us. I'm sure other schools have this as well, where it breaks down the averages by cohort, by nursing specifically, because you may have a great SAT score for admission, but will it hurt your opportunity to get into the honors program? They're still test optional. So just always looking at all the moving pieces when deciding whether or not to submit test scores to Elon.
Rowan, we are test optional and we plan on remaining test optional when it comes to scholarships. Well, I'm sorry, let me rewind a little bit. When it comes to test scores, you can reach out to an admissions counselor and you can ask them honestly, I have a test score of 1,000. Do you think I should submit this? And we are people. We have honest conversations with you and we say, well, maybe you should not submit it or maybe you should submit it. So we're willing to have that conversation with you. We're not test blind. So if you do submit your test score, we will look at that as well. There's three programs that you have to submit a test score for. If you're interested in our 3+4 medical programs, there is a test score requirement. So you do have to submit a test score for those. When it comes to our merit-based scholarships, we don't look at SATs for merit-based scholarships. And we actually just changed our merit-based scholarship policy. Any student that has at least a 3.0, they are going to receive a scholarship. We look at unweighted grades. So we look at your math, your science, your English, and your history. But if you have at least a 3.0, you will receive some type of scholarship.
Just to round it out, we're test optional, planning on staying that way.
Yeah, WNL does not have, again, this is all so helpful because you can hear the differences, right? Of certain schools have certain programs that are for scholarship, not for scholarship. You kind of have to keep track of a lot when you're applying, right? And that's, can be a job in and of itself, but WNL was not test optional until COVID, and we have been since. We are planning to be for fall of 2026. It's not required for any admission or merit scholarship consideration. So kind of no caveats to that, but they exist in a lot of schools and pockets. So yeah, be mindful.
Thanks for sharing the different policies. You have to keep an eye, especially as sophomores and juniors, have to keep an eye on those things. Because like I was saying, we are seeing a slow shift towards potentially requiring those test scores, but same thing with that demonstrated interest, really important just to ask. And still as sophomores and juniors, still important to be taking those tests if you are able to. We have the PSAT coming up for the 10th graders, and we have an SAT coming up at school for juniors. So, taking that opportunity, because the last thing we want to see is a student sitting in our counseling office saying, I fell in love with the school at Florida, that's in a Florida public school, and I don't have a test score to submit, and they require them, right? So, getting an idea of those types of things is really part of that research piece.
And that sometimes changes pretty quickly, right? Ohio
True.
State today just announced that they're going back to requiring tests for this coming admission cycle, right? So that's suddenly going to be juniors who maybe thought they didn't need to take the test,
Mhm.
and suddenly it's either going to change their list or it's going to change their approach. So best to have a score and then decide if you want to submit it.
Absolutely. And not just working with admission counselors, but working with the counselors at school as well to help with advising on those types of things. Being in the field, I think I know the answer to this, but are you also noticing an influx in your test score ranges? Because likely those that are applying with test scores or those on that higher scale. And is that something that you're considering in the test optional review or in the academic review of that student?
Yeah, so I'm happy to start that one. Yes.
Thanks.
Becoming test optional, you'll see a notable difference from, the class of 2020 profile to the class of 2028's profile difference, right? Of where those scores are. Students who are really confident submit really high scores, right?
Mhm.
I do think it's important, like a couple people have mentioned whether they're test blind, right? There's a lot of kind of nuance to that review as well. WNL is like, we will review the test if you submit it, right? So to be mindful of knowing kind of where you fall in a range of admitted student profile, all those things are helpful. I think it's certainly helpful first and foremost to kind of talk with your counselor, because they always have score data and kind of sets of information based on your school and our profile. But often college websites will be really helpful too in having those ranges. So you might want to submit to one school, but not another. So it's a lot of kind of decision making on a student side. But yeah, those averages have certainly gone up.
I'm not sure if this answers the question, but it's just a thought that I want to get out there. I think that it's very important that students do their research. Just because I like personally reviewing applications, I seen a 720 test score, but Rowan University is test optional. So if you would have done your research, you might have said that 720 test score is probably not a good score for me to submit. Let me keep it to myself. But because you didn't do your research and you just turned in the application without checking that you wanted your application to review test optional, now you think that we want your score. And then it's like, kind of, if you would have kept that score to yourself, you might have been accepted into the university. So it's definitely make sure that you do your research and have that list of schools that you want to apply to. And next to that list, say, do they require SAT score? Yes or no? And then go from there. So I'm not sure. I'm sorry if that kind of went the other way, but I thought about it.
No, definitely. Like flexing the opportunity to, if you're not a strong test taker, right? Really important. I used to work in admissions at Ithaca College. We have been test optional forever, even before the pandemic. And that's another additional thing. If you're a student, I am not a strong test taker, and you are anxious a school is going to switch over at some point. Maybe another intentional question to be asking admission counselors is, how long has your institution been test optional? Is this something that they've been committed to for a long period of time, possibly even before COVID? So, we're definitely notice a shift in trends of that. Emma, you mentioned the test blind schools. So for folks on the call, if you're not familiar, I think context clues, but schools that you could have a perfect 1600 on the SAT and they won't look at it, right? The University of California system is the most popular example of that system that is completely test blind. But yeah, no, Milan, I agree that it's important to do all these things on top of knowing that you don't have to submit your score to every single school you're applying to. I'm sure you might advise or talk with students that that score might look really good to one school that you're applying to, but maybe you're going to withhold that for another school.
And something I remember from my own SAT prep test taking process is when you're able to select the schools that you can send your test score to for free, as you're filling out your test, you don't know what that score is going to be yet. So maybe consider not sending that score off without knowing what it is yet. That really can change things because they will have that score on file for you when it comes time to reading your application.
That's a great point, Paige. And, um, obviously the cost associated with it can be prohibitive for some people. I'm curious if any of you all, have a policy where you can self-submit scores or self-submit, because, for folks who are watching, there is almost a whole nother filter layer to that research that I advise our seniors to do in the fall. It's check number one, like you were saying, Milan, do they require test scores? And if they do, or you want to submit them, or do they require them officially sent from College Board where you're paying them, right, to do it? Or some of these colleges now we're realizing we don't need you to pay that fee. You're just going to self-report those. So curious if anyone has experience with that at their institution.
This was our first year of actually doing the self-reported test scores at Alabama. And what we did, I don't know if this policy is going to change. So take what I say with what has happened this year. But students were able to self-report their test scores and they were admitted, but they were not allowed to proceed through the admission funnel, which means next steps in the process, until official test scores came in through College Board, meaning that they were verified. So they were admitted, so they knew, okay, I have a place, but if they wanted to go any further in the process, they had to wait for College Board to send those scores out. And what a lot of students don't understand when they submit their money to College Board for the scores to come, they think it's like, oh my God, here, I press the button. And then they email me and they say, hi, Miss Judy. So do you see my scores right now? No. No, that's not how this works. It does take a while for it to chug through the system, especially if you're picking like mid to late October to send those test scores. It's going to be a while before we receive them because they have to go on a tape and they have to be downloaded, and we get like thousands and thousands of applications. So just be mindful of that when you are self-reporting. If you self-report, you get in and then you don't, you can wait if you want to pause on that for a while to see what other schools are going to be doing. Again, knowing what your policies are. I think Milan said it great, like knowing the policies of all schools, making sure maybe you have a whiteboard or you have a notebook or you have an Excel file or however you want to do it, but making sure you have contact with all of us. Just send an email, shoot a text, and we'll be happy to answer questions. But you have to keep note of all those things as well.
We are okay with just self-reporting test scores, so you don't end up having to send it later on. A perk of sending it later on is that it can help waive your placement tests in math. So if you do have the official score sent over, you would not have to take the placement test.
Great. Yeah. That's Judy, thank you for sharing the Alabama process. I think that is a nice way to keep the honor code, right, intact. Because some parents ask all the time, like, so you're just taking their word for it? I think some colleges, eventually require those things to be official if you have more buy-in to that process. It really is avoiding the idea of you're going to be spending $15 per test and you don't even know if you're going to get admitted to that school. So definitely interesting to see there's more creative ways to be leaning on that a bit more. And in the self-report, side of things, if anyone else has more to mention about the test scores, I am going to move into the conversation about just self-reported grades. I think another trends from counselors that we see, the biggest impact I've seen over the past 11 years is for sure the emphasis on self-reporting grades. For folks on the call, if you're not familiar, there are some colleges out there, not all, that are asking students to kind of plain and simple, look at their transcript and enter in their grades. And colleges are using that to review rather than taking a look at PDFs that we send of transcripts, all those types of things. So I'm just curious your thoughts in relationship with that process, if your school uses them, and if they don't, maybe you might have heard from other colleagues, just being, experts in the field. I'm sure you have some thoughts on that.
So yeah, so I've the self-reported academic record, the SARR continues to grow. We do not use it. We do fully allow students to submit their own transcript though, right? Similarly, as Judy mentioned with Bama, through the admissions process, we are happy to take self-provided documents. In our years of doing self-reported, we've had no malicious abuse of it, right? So it's not students trying to game the system, because we do eventually verify all of our enrolled students. But it does make it a lot easier that if a student waited to the last minute, or a student, something happened, they can say, here's my transcript, please get my file complete. That not that something else is out of their control. We do ask some students, and I think the big driving factor on this is reviewing a college application historically has been pretty labor intensive, right? Because you mentioned all those PDFs that come in. I started working in college admissions when it was still paper file folders in rooms, and all the mail came in, and we had a mailroom staff of dozens that would handle them at another institution. So things have very much changed, and so things have been streamlined a lot. And I think where schools are getting at is, right, data, as we know in life, plays such a huge role. And when students are able to self-report their full transcript, it gives schools a lot more tools with which they can really kind of shape, but they can also review and analyze things. So they can right away know what level math students are at. They can know what their trends are. Maybe they want to look at only their core, so they only care about math, science, English, and social studies, right? Or they want to see what their overall GPA is. That'll include things like electives, band, and art, and PE. It kind of turns over all of that data directly to the school. Schools still have it, and schools can go through, and if they want to tabulate it all, they can. But it does also give schools the ability to recalculate GPAs, and take out weighting, add weighting. The goal is, I think, for a lot of schools, is trying to get kind of the best baseline we can, because as we all know, there's schools all throughout the state and all throughout the country that have wildly different grading scales, from 4-point scales to 6-point scales to 10-point scales, 7-point scales, even 100-point scales. I will say, just to put it out there, Chatham has a very normal grading scale, no crazy weight, nothing that from a school that takes a weighted GPA, nothing that we need to go back and recalculate on a standard basis. So in a very good way, you all are very, very normal and very standard, which is good.
Patrick, your check will clear probably in a week or so. So thanks for saying that.
Yeah, Washington and Lee does not use a student self-reported academic record, right? We're still doing the PDF. We're looking at the transcript. An application is not complete on our side of things until we have a transcript from your school. And that is from your school. So we do accept self-reported test scores. Again, like Alabama, until you want to matriculate, right? So you can be admitted on the basis of your test score. We just need to know the verified score before you matriculate. And the same is not true necessarily for transcript, right? Some of those documents do need to come from your school to us directly. So I don't have much to add for that I think Patrick covered the benefits of it really well, but we don't have that option for students to self-report.
We don't have that option either, no self-reporting. All documents must come from school guidance counselor, and even the person that wrote the teacher recommendation, that person must submit that as well. Test scores have to come from College Board, but we do understand that there is some financial burden sometimes getting those test scores to us, so we will accept a test score from a school guidance counselor.
Awesome.
We do not use any self-reported grades at all. Everything has to be reported through the counselor. It has to be emailed or sent on the system. I would rather the email to our processing team. So everything is nice, tied up in a nice little bow, and is very, very official.
And Elon is the same.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we'll see how that trend looks. I've heard mentions of there being an AI tool that would scan the student transcript, all those types of things. Who knows, right? We shall see. But the point to take away from this for sure is yet again another thing to do your research on. See if you can save a couple bucks for Starbucks and self-report your scores, or have your school counselor send them, like Milan mentioned for Rowan. See if there are ways for you to upload, like maybe yourself, for the student to take ownership of the process a bit more than potentially being fully reliant on that counselor. So thank you. That, the self-reporting thing is definitely a big conversation we're seeing a lot more of. I'm going to bounce around a bunch here. And again, if you think of anything else to add, please do. Can you speak to application rounds? So early action, early decision, regular decision for folks on the call who might be newer to this process. Early decision, you all could probably explain it way better than me, but early decision is a binding commitment that you're making to that institution, saying that if you are accepted to that institution, you are rescinding your application to other schools. Again, one of my analogies, it's the marriage of the college process, right? Till death do you part kind of situation. And then early action is just that you're getting your applications in a little bit earlier. So we see a lot of early decision action at Chatham. So curious if you can speak to how do the different application rounds impact your application? Does that affect scholarship consideration or financial aid consideration?
So at College of Charleston, we have them all. So we start with only two deadlines. Our early decision and our early action share the same deadline. At every school, and as much as I can speak for every school out there, the acceptance rates for any category are going to be the highest for early decision. They are the students that are making a commitment. You mentioned about financial aid. For us, early decision students, the ones putting in that binding agreement, are not restricted from financial aid, but they are essentially telling us ahead of time, I'm coming regardless of the price, right? So we always tell students that if they're considering early decision for us or any other school, they need to be able to very comfortably answer the two questions. This is absolutely, positively the school for me. And if faced with the full tuition, room and board, I'm prepared to pay that. And that's the reality of it. Is, and some families are perfectly comfortable to make that commitment early on in the process. And as a result of that, the acceptance rates follow with that. For us, early action then is non-binding. The same deadline, our students typically will hear back about mid-December. Following that, we do have actually an early decision 2 deadline. That's a little bit later. So students later on in the process, maybe they've applied early decision somewhere else, or they're starting to get feedback in the process. And all of a sudden in early January, they now are ready to go early decision and make a commitment to us. That's also our regular decision deadline. At that point, we are filling in our class. Acceptance rates are going to be lowest in the regular decision for us. There's a few other categories out there. Restrictive early action. I don't know what Syracuse does or what exactly that means, but there's a few special things out there, but for the most part, I think, and then there's rolling. Some schools do rolling, where they will typically get a decision out in a certain time frame, regardless of the cycle. We do not do that, but there are plenty of schools that will do a rolling decision as well.
We are one of those schools that does rolling admission.
I was just going to ask, I think we have some rolling folks on here.
Yes, so our application will open in August. When the Common App opens, that's when our application also opens. So there's 2 ways to apply. We are only rolling admission. So once we begin the process in early September of evaluating and looking through and going to those holistic committees of looking at all of the stuff that comes in once your application is complete, as soon as we have the decision, you will have the decision as well. Of course, as what happens, remember I just talked about the SATs, like if you wait until like that late October, early November, you're going to be stuck in that kind of little bit of a quagmire of all of those applicants. So the 2-week turnaround that you're hoping for is not going to happen. So just give the process a little bit of grace and give the staff who's trying to figure out those admission decisions also a little bit of grace, and give yourself a little bit of grace too when you're going through the process. Just let everybody breathe. Maybe, go into Ms. Slate's office, do some meditation, some deep breathing. That goes a long way in the whole process.
I have a college app, square breathing thing, mantra, because yeah, it can be a lot.
We are rolling as well. So our application opens in, I believe, sometime late August. We have 3 ways that you can submit your application: Common App, Coalition App, and we have an application on our Rowan University website. There are 3 programs, though, that if you are interested in, you want to get that application in as soon as possible. I think I stated 3 before. Those are our 3+4 medical programs. So if you're interested in our 3+4 veterinarian program, our 3+4 School of Osteopathic Medicine, or our 3+4 Cooper Medical School, you want to make sure you have those applications in by November 1st. And not just your application, every supporting material. So your high school transcript, your SAT score, your teacher recommendation, everything that is a completed application, you want to make sure you have that in, as well as our nursing program. So I forgot to mention this, and silly me, but Rowan University now has a 4-year nursing program. So we are very excited about that. The only way you can get admitted is through in the fall. So it's not a program you can transfer into. So the only way you can get admitted is in the fall. And if you're interested in that program, you want to make sure that your application is in by December 1st. And again, all of those supporting materials as well.
I'll say WNL is quite similar to College of Charleston in that we have some main rounds. The only thing different is we don't have early action. So we have an ED1, early decision 1, the binding, early decision 2, binding, and then regular decision. I will make a plug for like websites, because I think we've talked about this a lot too, of use the website. We have an amazing communications director in our office who's everyone's favorite person, and they work really hard to kind of keep the materials up on the website accurate, right? And there are some lovely charts in there too. The only difference at WNL that we have is a scholarship deadline that I think sometimes students maybe conflate with early action because it's December 1st and is kind of around that same time. But if you want to be considered for our merit programs, you have to have your application as well as the supplemental essay that goes with the Merit Scholarship app by December 1st. So again, you kind of have to pick your application round anyway. You can apply for Merit Scholarships, and the program's called the Johnson Scholarship specifically. You can apply through that as a regular decision applicant, as an early decision applicant, any of those things. But everything does have to be into us by December 1 if you want to be considered for those. We just had our scholarship weekend on campus a couple weeks ago. I was in Lexington last week for that. And I will just make another plug too for the binding round of early decision. Be curious again and ask questions. We offer pre-reads for financial aid. So if you've done the website things, which again include kind of the cost estimators that are on our websites, those are helpful and, maybe helpful depending on your family situation. But if there's any sort of complex kind of financial details that are in your family of, own a business or property things like that, our financial aid office will go through your CSS profile and your FAFSA in advance of you applying to say, here is what you could expect for your application for financial need-based aid if you're admitted. So then you feel good about, okay, I'm going to submit this application for early decision. So some schools offer things like that can be helpful maybe ahead of time, but obviously there are also those free resources on the website there of, quick and easy calculator type things as well.
An important thing to note with our application, we do have the early decision, early action, and regular. Our fellows programs and our honors program are now embedded into our Common App or the Elon app, and they have a priority deadline and then their regular deadline. The priority deadline falls on the same day as our early decision and early action deadline, so November 1st. We are able to open the application or that portion of the application back up for you until the January 10th deadline. But even if you are applying regular decision to Elon, you can still apply early and get the priority deadline. I always recommend considering that. Those programs have anywhere from 20 to up to 60 seats, so not many. So that priority deadline can go a long way.
Thanks for highlighting all those different kind of options. An important thing I like to mention for our students is, you have some schools that are rolling, as Judy mentioned, opens August 1st, and not necessarily with Alabama, but sometimes we start school and sometimes some seniors have a decision if they apply to a rolling school. And it's really important to not compare that process, because you might be a student who's applying to all colleges that don't have rolling, which means you may be on a more traditional decision process. You might not be getting your decisions until way later. We know with the world, though, of posting on Instagram, TikTok, all these things, there can be a lot of pressure, but reminding yourself about those things is really important, and understanding the different deadlines is important as well, not just for applying, but also for thinking about waiting on decisions, because I think that's something that our students are pretty anxious about in regards to those things. Okay, so what are some things, or a piece of information you think is most important for people that are new to the process that they should know? We may have folks on the call that, again, some sophomores are just getting started with the process, or maybe it's their first time through as juniors. Anything that you would say after working with individuals? Milan, I see you unmuted.
Yes, because this is
Yeah.
something that I think is one of the best pieces of advice. And
Awesome.
my son is he's a junior, so he's going to be starting this process soon. And
Oh, yes.
he's gonna be sick of me. I made a binder and everything for him, so he's gonna be sick of me. But one of the best pieces of advice I think that I can give is to create an email specifically for your colleges. Because even now, I have a bad habit of when you go into a store, they always ask, "Do you want to put the email down?" And you should see my email box. I have so much stores in there. So if you just have an email specifically for your college information, because you guys are going to get so overwhelmed with the amount of college emails that you're going to get, but if you have an email specifically for that, I think you'll be less overwhelmed, and it will always make it easier for you to find what you need specifically from the college that you're looking for. So even if it was like Milan Whetstone's college at gmail.com, that's something that that's where that college stuff is going to go. So that is my piece of advice.
Solid advice. You get a lot of info.
So yes, I was one of those crazy moms who had those binders for the colleges. I actually had a folder for each college that my kids, I have 4 kids. So I've been at this process on that side as a parent for a very long time. But what I found, and great advice with the email with the college, because nobody wants to get the email from mama4@aol.com thinking that that is Tommy's email and that we made a mistake on our application. So let's all like put that to bed and make sure that Tommy has maybe Tommy College 2029 or something as an email address. But the one thing that I can say that I think helped my kids the most when they were going through the process is I was the one who was, making sure the information was in those binders, but having my kids own the process. They had to be the ones driving the bus. They had to be the ones having the conversation. I would remind them, hey, is a due date coming up? Do you need to do something about this? But when it was all said and done, it was their process. If they didn't get something in, they couldn't blame me because everything was in that binder and they had to check it. So making sure that as a parent, you are always going to be your child's safety net. And that's a great thing. You want them to feel that they have something or someone to come back to, so that, you're always going to support them in their process. You're always going to be able to give them advice. But when it comes down to it, they're the ones that are going off to college. Although, yes, we are going to be the ones paying for it, but they are the ones going to college, and they have to be the ones that are making that decision of fit, of where they want to apply. Have the financial aid conversation. If you cannot afford the $80,000 a year college, then you're the parent. You have to kind of tell them, look, I understand that's your dream, but maybe you need to rein the dream in a little bit. There's plenty of other schools that don't cost as much that could be just as good as the dream. Let's try to take a look at that. So, yeah, I also gave you a lot to digest, but I now have 4 that have graduated from college, and they are all 4 very successful adults, and that makes me feel very proud as a first generation student myself.
Awesome. So takeaway is a binder. I get no from Milan, Ed, Judy. I would also add, reiterate that financial piece. People think that the process is like research schools, apply to schools, and financial aid, and that is absolutely, or just funding, just college funding. That's just the not appropriate way to go. Research and college funding should be going hand in hand. So you're having those conversations right from the start and not being thrown off. I know, I'm sure some of you can relate to this. I remember being at admissions and admitting a student, and they were so excited, and then they followed up and their hearts were broken because they just couldn't make it work. And you would hope that if that conversation happened sooner, expectations could be managed a bit more.
I would add on with that. I think, right, the reality is, as parents are approaching the college search process, you're also inevitably coming up on one of the biggest changes in your relationship with your student, right? And that's just the nature of them reaching legal adulthood, going, in many ways kind of going off on their own, and that's going to bring with it some change. But part of that, I think, is to have really honest conversations about money. Because I think one of the things that you mentioned, right, having the conversation about what the budget looks like, what is that? But it's not just the budget, because I've definitely come across parents who will say, we're going to pay for it no matter what. And what they mean is, if you get into Princeton, I'm going to pay the full price for Princeton. What they don't mean is that they rank and they place a certain value on schools. And so I think parents need to have those honest conversations about, this is how much, how much money actually exists, and also what do they place a value on, because they may be willing to pay top dollar for certain schools, but that same dollar amount may not translate to other institutions, and students need to be aligned with their parents on that, because that's going to be a heartbreak if that happens down the road. And that's, I think you see a lot of people nodding their head, because this time of year you have a lot of families who did not have that conversation, and yes, they would have paid for maybe other schools, but they're not quite willing to pay for ours, and that becomes a difficult conversation. One other topic I will put on there is to put in and remember that this is going to feel incredibly personal, and this is going to feel like there are the admissions committees, and it's a holistic review, and we're going to look at a number of different factors, but we are, by our simple nature, right? College of Charleston, with our 10,000 students, we had over 30,000 applications, right? And that is just out of our ability to really honestly get to know each and every student. And so this process is going to feel very personal. And so when a student gets a decision that they're not happy with, it's going to feel like we looked at you, we looked at your son or daughter, we looked at anyone and said, we don't like you. The reality is, there are so many factors that play into it. And while it will feel incredibly personal, it is absolutely not personal. There's a lot of factors. There's institutional, there's budgetary concerns. There's a lot of different things that you have no control over that are going to impact your individual outcome through any admissions process. So bear that in mind.
That is such a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Not even just the adult transitioning to my baby being an adult, but then also what you closed on there, Patrick, of it's so easy to compare, and it's so easy to think about those things, and the mental health of students and stuff, they take that heavily. And for some individuals, this might be the first time they are met with a no or a deny or something along those lines. So thinking about how to have open and healthy conversations about those things, seeking out resources, the admission counselors as well can be that resource too, because it's important to stay healthy throughout that process, for sure.
And my piece of advice, I guess, for students who are just starting to wade into these waters, right? We're in a frame of mind of, students getting decisions right now and kind of shaping our classes. But if you're really beginning this and have no idea whether you like a giant school, if you like a tiny school, if you want to be in a city, I was pretty convinced I wanted to be in a metro, like a city, Philly, DC, somewhere like that. Try them out. If you have any opportunity, if you're traveling through a place, stop and look at a college campus. I think that's one of the best ways that you can tell what you like. And you might not know right away, but I think don't narrow yourself too early, because you could be a lifelong. since I'm in Pennsylvania, I'll put Penn State on the line. You could be a lifelong Penn State fan, but go to Happy Valley and say, I can't imagine going to school here, right? Then maybe try a liberal arts school in that same little area, right? So I would just say try things, try different things, visit when you can, to get a sense of these places, if at all possible.
I'll hop on that too. And usually the example we'll use at Chatham with students is we have within a 40-minute radius, sorry, Rowan, you're a little bit further, but definitely go visit Rowan. But within a 40-minute radius, you can view and tour a lot of different colleges in our area. You can go to Rutgers and get on a bus to during your tour and realize, oh, whoa, Drew is literally just down the road, where I'm at right now. You can go and walk around and you can just see all these different types of campuses. It might not be where you're intending to apply, but you're getting the feel for that type of campus, that type of experience. Hop on the train and go check out NYU. You're going to have a CVS, right? Or I guess it's a Duane Reade in New York City. You're going to have a Duane Reade right next to your dorms, right? And so see how those things feel. So absolutely, Emma, great point.
Creating a timeline that works for you is really going to be important during this. Not everyone needs to work on this all day, every day. You shouldn't. Dedicate a couple days a week, a couple hours a day to spend time applying to college. It shouldn't be the only conversation, right? You should also enjoy this process. It shouldn't feel like your second part-time job. So don't run yourself into the ground with this. Take your time. You have from August 1st, sometimes before, to start working on those applications until November, December, January, even rolling past that. So just make a calendar that works with you, your academic load in high school, your job and everything, and go from there.
That's a great point too, because, working with students, they might be on the football team or field hockey team in the fall, and they also are doing 50 other things. And so maybe those early action rounds aren't it, like it's not going to work for them, right? And so thinking about how that fits into their lifestyle and those types of things. Anything else anyone would like to add? I see that we're coming to the end, and I think honestly, all the things you said individually are such great ways to close out because they are real and honest and really important things to be thinking out, regardless of where you're at in the process.
I've got at least one thing to kind of maybe end on here is
yes, please share your wisdom.
You're gonna be fine. Right. And that's the reality of it is you go to a very good school. You have people in your life who have invested in living in a community that has a really great school system to it. You've got support. You've got people pulling on your behalf. Listen, is your college search going to go absolutely according to plan? Are you going to get into every school that you think you are? Probably not. Right. But you've got support. You have people pulling for you. You have options. Right. As we mentioned, right. Physically, where you are in Chatham is close to a lot of different schools, right? And if you expand that circle out to then go out even 4 or 5 hours, you're going to grab a ton of schools, right? And yes, there are trends, right? Southern schools are very popular, and other certain areas and certain majors, they come and ebb and flow a little bit, but there's a lot of schools. There's a lot of opportunity out there. There's not, I'll be honest, there's not a lot of full rides scholarships out there. That's the one thing that's really probably not out there too much. So it is going to be expensive and there's going to be some cost to it, but there are people that want to help you, right? The thing I'm consistently reminded of as I do college fairs and travel around is the people that get into college admissions, and particularly those that stay in college admissions, do it because they like helping, right? They like talking to you. And all of us are advocates for our own institution, but I think more than that, all of us are advocates for how transformative a college experience can be. And so I think you'll find people very happy to talk to you and give advice and help you. And yes, that'll always be generally tinged with trying to get you to my institution, or at least make my institution look as good as possible. But the people you're going to encounter, the tour guides, the admissions counselors, the leadership you may see on campus, they're here because they like working with 18 to 22-year-olds. They like helping you figure out this chapter of life. And so, yes, you are going to encounter some no's, you are going to encounter some setbacks, but overall, you're going to be fine. And you're going to wind up at good schools, and you're going to have great college experiences. you're going to get to that next chapter. It's going to take some work, so do the work, but in the meantime, know that you are in really good hands.
I'll add one more thing to that, and that's no matter where you wind up, it's what you make of your experience. It's what you make of your college. Your college does not define you, you define your experience. So no matter, as Patrick said, no matter where you wind up, take that experience and just jump in wholeheartedly, because it could be, maybe your third choice or whatever, but what happens is you start to love and grow. And now it has become, maybe it becomes a transformative experience for you. So just take what the experience you get and just make the most of that opportunity.
Awesome, excellent sentiments, and I know everyone on the panel agrees with that. Again, thank you so much for your time tonight. I echo everything they're saying. We are more than happy in the counseling office to help support you with the process. We just did some sophomore classroom presentations. We've been doing our junior conferences. We're excited to get started and have this kind of conversation, and know that we are staying up on top of all the things that are changing and updates. And, especially if you're sophomores, things may change by the time, you see this video. But no, by the time you're getting to that process. So we will continue to provide some excellent resources like you all here, and we're so appreciative of your time. But thank you all for attending. And like I said, this will be recorded and I will send it out, or actually add it to our YouTube page. But yeah, thanks again, everyone.